it well. Played it very, very, very well indeed.
No more slices for you.
Oh, look at that for judgment.
You'll learn.
So more milestones for Slice. Last week we had our most downloaded, most listened to episode so far, Sam. And this week we're on our first major championship. So life is good. Your T-shirt is good. Those who are listening will note that, those who are watching will note that Sam is wearing what I would call Augusta green, whereas I'm wearing sort of got dressed late blue. But yes, good stuff. You're Masters themed and raring to go.
I am, yeah. I mean, I'll just creep up slightly.
Oh,
you may not be able to see, but so the logo here is, so this is a brand called Live Forever Golf, which is, in case you don't know, that is Matt Every's
with an E brand on the end of it, yeah.
Yeah, but he's a massive Oasis fan anyway, Matt Every, and he set up this golf brand called Live Forever Golf, which I like, and they do these sort of themed T-shirts every now and again. So this is obviously a Masters themed one, so I thought it'd be appropriate alongside my Masters mug.
Oh, it's class. It's class. Which is more surprising, Matt Every being an Oasis fan or Nick Watney being the world's most surprising hip-hop fan? And that one always, you look at Nick Watney and never has anybody looked less likely to be a big hip-hop aficionado, and yet he is.
Yeah.
I think I've answered my own question there.
I wonder whether Brendan Steele ever sort of had a pop at him for listening to hip hop on the range like he did with Will Wilcox back in the day. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember that, and it makes me think that I think Brendan Steele is from Idlewild, California, and Idlewild are a great band. Maybe Brendan Steele likes Idlewild.
Lovely musical reference there.
Thank you.
We need to talk quickly about your new backdrop there, because for a long time there was sort of nothing in the back, and now there's all kinds of stuff going on. What we got?
Yeah, we've got my new limited edition Fender Telecaster, otherwise known as my midlife crisis. It was that, a trip to Turkey, or a convertible. I've gone with the guitar. Cheapest of the three, and classiest, I would say. That's my wife's piano. My wife, like you, Sam, is a pianist.
Okay.
Yeah, she doesn't think she's very good. She's way better at that than I am at that. And then I've got some stuff on the walls. It's nice to have finally done it. It's been, we moved in here 18 months ago, and I'm sure you've been through similar things in your life, but you move into a new house, you've got 2 kids. We actually signed for this house the day my second son was born. So wow. That gives you an indication of how intense that particular time was. So I give myself a pass for having taken a while to put up some shelves and buy a guitar, but that's where we are now. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what are the golf pictures you got in the background there?
We've got from right to left: Augusta, St Andrews, and Royal Melbourne. I'm pointing the wrong way. Augusta, St Andrews, and Royal Melbourne.
Very nice.
Genuinely, I just wanted something golfy, mainly because you said let's do a podcast. So I got them from some person on Etsy or whatever, and got it framed by a local photo framing guy, and that's what we got. And you can actually, you might be able to just see, I don't know, in the very side there, I think I'm pointing at it, I've got it right this time, that's Rory McIlroy. So that's like a sketch of Rory McIlroy that I bought at a market in Leeds a few years ago, and that's the Sporting Life newspaper, which is a lovely touch. There you go. Thank you for asking. I've been waiting for someone to ask about my background. I've been on endless Zoom calls. No one says anything. But yes, we got there.
I was going to ask last week, but Paul McGinley, I didn't want to sort of eat into our precious Q&A time. So.
Sure, that seems reasonable. Good decision.
Yeah. Anyway,
speaking of eating into time, it's Masters week, and we're talking about my walls.
It's begun. Let's before we go. Obviously, we're doing a bit of a Masters special, so we're going to talk a lot more about the Masters, but. Let's do a quick recap on last week's events, starting with the Valero Texas Open, which Brian Harman won. Did you watch much of this, Ben?
No.
Ah, okay. I did.
Good for you. Good. We should have planned this, and I should have asked you. Sam, did you watch much of the Texas Open? I happened not to see it. This wasn't a case of me choosing to watch other things like UK Gold instead. I just couldn't watch it. What was it like?
Enough. Well, all I want to say is Brian Harman over the weekend, particularly, his scrambling was absolutely unreal. I mean, of course, there'll be a couple that he missed, but it felt like basically every time he was off the green, which was a lot, I think Justin Ray put up a stat that it was the lowest greens in regulation hit by a PGA Tour winner for, I can't remember, it was at least a decade. But he kept getting up and down. And ultimately, he wasn't really put under any tremendous pressure on Sunday. I mean, Novak was close for a while. I think he got within one. And then, Harman just always seemed to find the answers. And then it got to the end. Unfortunately, Novak made a mess of 17 when he had a bit of an opportunity. Left a 6-foot putt short, which I thought was just the worst thing he could possibly do. I mean, even if he'd hold that putt, it would have been a 2-shot swing going to the 18th. But at least it would have maybe given Harman something to think about. But as it was, he had a 3-shot lead going down the last and did what he needed to do, really. And I mean, ultimately, it feels in some ways like a bad miss not to have Harman on board on a type of course that should suit. I mean, Batir obviously won, last year. It's a left-hander's golf course in many ways, you could say. But similar, very, good short game, tidy player. It's but then he was dreadfully out of form, and his putting had completely gone off the ball, which is normally a strength of his game. He put a new putter in the bag, and it was working. So it happens.
Nicely summed up. I just remembered, actually, after Men Behaving Badly had finished, I watched like one hole, and I watched the 16th and 17th, and I have to say, I talk about it a lot. The margin between winning and losing be very, very fine. I thought Andrew Novak's drive to 17 was a great shot, in those circumstances. But he was probably between clubs, wasn't he? And it was straight downwind. And as soon as it left the club, I think he thought, this is perfect. And it's gone through the back, and he's duffed his chip, and the rest is history, as they say. But he looks like a player who's going to win something soon enough, doesn't he? And I don't think he did that much wrong. But major champion, comfortable in a win, and with a killer short game, it was a good combination for the test they had. I would say this. I mean, just keeping it slightly Masters themed. I'm not sure it's the best way to warm up for the Masters. I'll be honest. The way it turned out, I think there'd be a lot of players there who, let's put it this way, I don't think Ludwig would have minded missing the cut in the end.
Yeah, I agree with you largely. It's a very different type of golf course in so many ways, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot more trouble off the tee. Obviously, the wind was gusting all week, which I don't think is going to be at Augusta. And I don't know. Yeah, like you say, miscut could be a blessing in disguise. Who knows? I mean, Batir is another example who, a lot of people expected to go well and didn't. And a lot of people, I think, quite like for the Masters. So it'd be interesting to sort of, pick through that. How much does a miscut actually mean on that type of golf course? So, we'll see. But I'm sure we'll talk more on that specific topic. The LPGA, it was a T-Mobile match play. Madeline Sagstrom won. She beat Lauren Coughlin in the final. And then one thing I wanted to say about this, it's interesting. I mean, Paul McGinley mentioned, didn't he, last week about the fact that he saw himself as a real, match play specialist. And you look at Sagstrom and Coughlin to a large degree, really not in great form this year. But they come out, play match play event. They both, they were both in the Solheim Cup last year. Sagstrom's played several now. Obviously very comfortable in match play. Coughlin was one of the star performers of the US team. Put them in a match play setting, and they make it all the way to the final.
Yeah, and isn't it a shame there isn't an equivalent event on the PGA Tour?
Big shame.
It feels like a real miss. Despite the problem, they had problems with the WGC match play as it used to be. The primary among them being that it sort of gets worse as the week goes on, as fewer matches are on course and so on and so forth. But there must be a way they can play match play and make it better than it was and get it back on the schedule, because, it's not going to attract a new audience, I don't think, but not everything has to. Some of it just has to service the current audience. And I think if you polled people who are likely to sit down and watch PGA Tour on a Sunday night, do you want a match play event on the schedule? Overwhelmingly, they'd vote yes. So hopefully that changes soon.
I hope so. I really like the match play. It's just something different, isn't it? We just don't see much of it. And
yeah,
it always offers something different. I really like I must say, I do much prefer the early rounds to the weekend. And that's maybe part of the problem. But all the same, like you say, they should find room for it. And, we talked about this a few weeks ago, didn't we? That there's, musings that possibly it might feature in the Tour Championship. Whether or not it will, I don't know at this stage. But let's hope at some form it comes back either this year or next. Right, Corn Ferry Tour, the Club Car Championship. didn't follow a huge amount of this, but the Frenchman Jeremy Gondon, possibly, was victorious. Do you know much of Gondon?
I know very little of Gondon, but I'm glad you asked. No, I don't. I know Ryan Baroff, who I don't know whether he listens to this, but I do know he's a good egg on sort of golf gambling Twitter. He put him up, and he was a big price as well. He'd the previous tournament, it had been a month ago, but it just shows you as we're going to come on to all these Masters contenders and the different ways you can prepare. Last time we saw Jeremy Gondon, he signed off with around a 62 in Chile, and then a month later you'd be worried that all such momentum had been lost, but he came out and won. So good on him. It had been he'd been hinting at it, loads of low rounds, not 72 holes, but he obviously sorted that out.
Yeah, he did. And the only other note I have about that event, it was a shame to see Russell Knox come up just shy, because it's been nice to see him round in some form. He's had a tough few years, hasn't he? Basically, ever since the pandemic, his game completely dropped off. Obviously, he won several times before then, and he got as high as in the top 20 in the world. And he went in very close. I mean, he was, I believe he was leading at 54 hole stage. And he was, right in the mix all the way to the end, and just came up shy. But hopefully, there's a win around the corner, and potentially promotion back to the PGA Tour on the horizon for him.
Yeah, that would be great to see, wouldn't it? He's still a very tidy player. Under the right circumstances, I think it's no surprise, and this would probably be the worry going forward. He's obviously made a very solid start to the year, but when they get into America, they do have a lot of big wide fairways, low rough, 25 under. And this was a tougher test around a sort of a golf course that would be good enough to host a PGA Tour event. So we'll see how he gets on. But if he puts okay at that level, he should be winning tournaments.
Yeah, definitely more of a Knoxy type of course. Yeah. The other few events to cover. So Live Golf, Live Miami. Mark Leishman won. It was several of the big names were in the mix. Final round. You had Mickelson not far off. Bryson was up there for a while. Garcia, I think, wasn't far behind. So it was, there was some, an interesting warm up for several of the guys who were playing the Masters this week. Obviously, Leishman is not one of them, but a win for him. It's been a little while since he won last. I believe it was the Zurich Classic, actually, which is obviously a team event.
Yeah, and he won the team event here as well with Cam Smith in effect. So there you go, a nice little round off there. I mean, probably it's one for next week, when by then we'll have the viewing figures. They're going to be interesting to see. For a long time it looked like Liv had landed on the absolute jackpot. They got Bryson in front, loads of big names right behind him, and a Texas Open, which was probably for the purist. But then actually towards the end of the final round at Doral, whether or not it affected viewing figures, I don't know. But all the big names really fell by the wayside, and you're left with Leishman and, Schwarzer was up there. It was good. This is very, very good players. I never want to give the impression that Mark Leishman's a fabulous player. But it wasn't the superstar showdown that had been on the cards on Saturday.
No, this is true. The other two events, just to quickly talk about. So the LET, it was the Joburg Ladies Open, and Mimi Rhodes won for the second time in a row. So obviously, we're talking about someone who's an extremely talented youngster. So 2 wins in a row at any level is good. Ladies European Tour, you can only imagine she's heading to the LPGA soon. And then lastly, we don't normally talk about the Champions Tour, Ben, largely because, I know you detest it, but it's worth mentioning that the James Hardy Pro Football Hall of Fame Invitational, great name, was won by Angel Cabrera, his first win since his release from prison. And obviously he'll be featuring in the Masters this week. Any thoughts?
None really. It'd be interesting to see how they price up Top Senior on the back of that. But it is the second time in about 5 weeks we've talked about someone being released from prison and winning a golf tournament. So obviously Ryan Peake in Australia, there was a bigger gap. But yeah, look, I don't want to get too high and mighty about Angel. I hope he's learned his lesson. I haven't seen what he said afterwards. I hope he showed some contrition. I imagine he just didn't mention what had gone before. But I'll tell you one thing that does really annoy me, and it's in my player profiles. Fred Ridley, the Augusta chairman, described Angel Cabrera's conviction for very serious crimes as legal issues. And I think he said when he gets those legal issues cleared up, he'll be very welcome back at Augusta National. What a sickening phrase. What he should have said was, when he served his prison sentence, yes, we'll welcome him back. I've nothing against that, but don't call them legal issues. Ridiculous. Anyway.
Well, let's move on. I mean, the only last thing I'll say is prison release the new nappy factor? Just throwing it out there.
It's not. Thankfully, it's not a theory we'll be able to put to the test all that often, is it? Yeah, who knows? But look, he's Angel will win a lot more tournaments on that tour, I suspect, if his head's in the game and stuff. It's hard to talk about, but he did also, alongside the crimes he's committed for which he is responsible, he did have some problems with alcohol, and if those are behind him, then perhaps a good swan song awaits. But I hope him and his legal issues are out of Augusta National on Friday evening, which they will be.
Let's hope. Right, let's go on to our Masters chat, Ben. And I'm going to open with a little trivia question for you. Now, there are no points here. Okay, this is not highest bidder. There's no. You can't win or lose this game. Oh, you can win by getting it right. But anyway, I'm going to give you. Do you remember? Well, of course you remember. Have I got news for you? The show which is still on, I believe. They have a round, or at least they used to have a round called the odd one out round. Is that still a thing? Okay. Yep. So I'm going to give you 4 players in the Masters field. Okay, and you got to tell me which is the odd one out and why. Okay. Phil Mickelson.
Yep.
Bubba Watson.
Left-handed. Who's right? Bubba Watson. Left-handed.
Yep. Brian Harman.
Left-handed.
Bob McIntyre.
Also left-handed. That's a shame. They've all played the Ryder Cup. 3 of them are major champions, and Bob McIntyre isn't. There you go. Not going to be the answer. Too easy.
That's what I was hoping you were going to say, because it's too easy. The actual answer, Ben, is that although they are all on paper lefties, only one of them is a true lefty.
Right.
Which is who?
That is probably Bubba.
Correct. Yeah. And now, you know what? I only discovered this recently, and I think the first time I started digging into this was I saw at the Players' Championship, Matt McCarty was signing something, and I saw that he was right-handed. I remember tweeting at him, and I said, "You're right-handed," and he was like, "Yeah." He just grew up playing lefty for some reason. I don't even know why. And then I realised that obviously Phil Mickelson grew up playing, he's right-handed, grew up playing left-handed because he mirrored his dad's swing. Bob McIntyre, I think, a very similar thing. And then I looked up Brian Harman because I was intrigued at this point. I looked up Brian Harman signing autographs, and he was signing with his right hand, And then I looked up Batia as well, and he's there signing with his right hand. I'm like, who are true lefties?
Unbelievable. So this is all a con. There are no There's no lefties alliance. There's only you and Bubba Watson. I mean, are you a true left-hander? Please tell me you are.
I'm a through and through lefty, Ben. Everything I do is left-handed.
You. If I see like pictures in the paper of you signing something right-handed, revealed sliced toast, actually a righty. I wonder if Elvis Smiley is that. You can make that your mission to subcategorize all the left-handers of the world.
I need to find out whether Elvis is. I may have to ditch him for my player tracker if he isn't, but
for Sam Bairstow, and hope that Sam Bairstow doesn't bowl right arm off spin in his spare time.
He does sound like a cricketer, actually, Sam Bairstow.
Well, yeah, Bairstow's a good start, isn't it? Maybe that's where I was going.
Right. Anyway,
good question.
So general Master stuff. First question, Ben, I have for you, and I'll answer it as well. A two-part question. What was the first Masters you remember watching, and which has been your favourite Masters to date?
So Faldo and Norman. I'm younger than I look, you see. I think a lot of people watching this saying, "You're 50 years old. Surely you remember, Bernhard in '88 or whatever it was." No, Faldo against Norman. I was a huge Cynic Faldo fan growing up, so that was like, it doesn't get much better than that. In terms of ones I enjoyed watching, I have to be honest, in the moment as it happened, my views on him have changed somewhat since. But I'm still glad it happened. It would be Sergio against Justin Rose. And it's one of those, like, if you ask me now, I'd probably go back and change the result, which, it's a bit spiteful, I suppose. But at the time, I was watching it in the office I used to work in Leeds with Dave John, who some people may remember used to write previews of golf tournaments, Sporting Life, one of Life's good guys. And we had a big takeaway from Red's barbecue, and we watched it. And come the end of it, I was a complete. Dave John is the most phlegmatic man in the world. Nothing moves him. If his pulse rate never changes, and he was just enjoying the sport. But I was pacing up and down, praying for Sergio Garcia to win this tournament. And it was a great finish, wasn't it? And look, if I get round to writing this, I'm not sure I will, but my plan for a while has been A, to close WhatsApp, and B, to write a piece on how we are due a great Masters, because we've not had one since 2019. So yeah, same questions to you then.
Well, I would say so. I actually didn't. I mean, I remember watching bits and bobs with my dad growing up, and I probably saw bits of Faldo against Norman. But the first one that I really remember properly watching, like sitting down and watching and being like engrossed, I would say, was when Mike Weir won. Actually, in 2003, I just finished uni and I was living in a shared house with a load of blokes, and they quite like golf. And I remember they were like, we're going to sit, we're going to watch the Masters tonight. Sit down, and watch the whole final round, and I must have. Watched, I don't know, 6-7 hours. This is obviously back when it was on BBC, and I was just engrossed. It was great. It was a really good one. I thought. I mean, at that point, I had no real benchmark, but I think also I'd had a little bet on Mike Weir just because I knew he was left-handed and he'd been playing well.
But is he left-handed?
No, I don't know.
22 years later or whatever, you find out the bloke's a righty like the rest of them.
But I think it's funny because you talk about watching it with someone, and there's something about watching it with a fellow fans of the sport, or fellow just general sports fans, and you can kind of, I really like that. I think that was part of it. It's sort of the idea of watching something that stretched over several hours, having a few drinks and just chatting about it. I like that, and as part of part of the reason I quite like Twitter, or I like it less than I used to, but the idea of watching live sport and having a bit of a dialogue going whilst you're watching it, because nowadays I'm generally watching by myself at home, so it's nice to have that. But anyway, so that was the first one that I really remember properly watching start to finish. And my favorite one, I would probably say actually was, as I was a huge Mickelson fan, and then it was when he won the first time, because it felt like it was the one thing that he really wanted to achieve, and for a lot of people, he was a fan favorite, wasn't he? And it was sort of an iconic moment for him. So that was probably my favorite. My favorite in recent years would be 2019, but like probably everyone will say. But yeah, there's been some good ones.
Well said. I'd throw in Adam Scott. Now I'm thinking more about it. I think the Adam Scott's Masters in the rain. Yeah. I think I might have been in tears that evening. That was a great Masters, wasn't it? And Cabrera's birdie on 18, one of the great birdies actually. Scum, but whatever. Yeah, some good Masters, and yeah, you're right about it. I've not watched a lot of golf with other people, because when it happens, generally the final round of a golf tournament is Sunday night. And even as a younger man, Sunday night, apart from when I was living with a friend or whatever, I probably didn't spend it with friends very often. But I did watch the Miracle of Medina happened to take place while I was living with one of my oldest and best friends, and he's not a golf fan, and it's cliche, but he watched that with me and was like, he was there living every moment. Like, it didn't turn him into a golf fan, which is a shame, but he for those 6-7 hours, he certainly was
cracking. Yeah, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. But like I say, there have been some really good ones that I haven't even mentioned. When Schwartzel won, I thought that was great finish. When Willett won, obviously you had, you sort of relied on the speed to collapse, but it was still a really thrilling finish.
I think the Schwartzel one, there was a point. Didn't something like 9 different players hold the lead in the final round that year? It's like KJ Choi did, Cabrera did again. So many golfers held the lead, and that's what we've not had. Like, I know it was kind of close when Hideki won, because Xander was still there until he hit it in the water on 16. But since then, like Scheffler and Rahm over the last 3 years, they've basically ended the conversation pretty early. And even before that, like there were 4 players in it last year. The year before when Rahm won, it was 2. There were 2 players in that Masters from about halfway. And the year before with Scheffler, it was Scheffler and Cam Smith, wasn't it? Rory finished second from about 12 shots behind. So we've not had one of those Masters where, like, at the turn on Sunday, and there are 10 people who can win the Masters. If I had one wish for this week, it would be Rory McIlroy winning, obviously. If I had two wishes for this week, it would be that happened at the end of one of those classic renewals.
Well, that was your wish at the start of this year, wasn't it? When we did our first pod, I think
there you go.
That was our thing, and you said your one wish was to have a Masters that's still, there's a lot of people who can win at the halfway stage. Sorry, at the going into the last 9 holes. So, yeah, I hope that happens. I really do. Right now, we've got a special feature which I suggested and you agreed to, Ben, which is that we're going to talk through individually basically everyone who's 100 to 1 or less in the market. So we got 36 players to recap here, and then we're going to take 18 each, going to alternate. And you're going to start us off, Ben, with Brian Harman. Discuss his chances.
Smoke and mirrors last week, terrible Augusta record. Just one you'd want to take on. There you go. I've bought us some time. I don't know how. I'm going to wait for you. You should have gone first, really. But you're going to do Keegan Bradley now, and if I'll get a sense here of how long you want to take. But there will be some of these long shots I'll spend more time on. But Brian Harman, he's got a really bad Augusta record, and if he's won a windy Texas Open because of his short game, I would suggest that it might force his prices in markets like top left-hander, and there'll be better left-handers. If indeed, I can't make the same joke again. Carry on, Keegan Bradley. Keegan Bradley.
So here's an interesting one, Ben. It may not be interesting. It's interesting for me. I've already backed Keegan Bradley this week. I think he's really under the radar, and I'll tell you why. So the last 2 years he's been 23rd and 22nd here. Not amazing, but pretty solid, right? In both of those years, he had missed the cut in both the Genesis and the Players that same year. This year, he was tied 20th at the Players. He did okay at the Genesis. That was obviously at Torrey Pines, so we can't take that with a pinch of salt. But in terms of Players, a recent big event, he was much better than he was in the last 2 years. So that's one thing. Secondly, there's one key stat that I've looked at for many years here, and the first time I looked at this was when Cabrera won the first time, and he ranked really highly in approaches from 175 to 200 yards, which for me makes sense around here. You have long approaches, right? He was very good at that. And then I noticed over the pattern of the next few years, a lot of the winners were very high in that stat. And even now, most of the time, the winner will be in a sort of elite category in that 175 to 200 yard range. Keegan is very high on that. So there's a few reasons. And basically, he's playing better than he has in the run up in his last few Masters starts. So yeah, I like him. Justin Rose, Ben.
Compelling case. So Justin Rose, 4 first-round leads here, 4 times placed in that market. People will just default going back in for the first-round lead. He's become really hard to predict. He's his absolute best. He was a fabulous driver of the ball, and now he's not. He's definitely being left behind in distance, but he's also never been particularly accurate. Obviously, at his best he was, but it's not necessarily been a strength of his. I think the interesting thing about Justin Rose is that whatever you say about him, his floor and his ceiling, that gap is huge. And if you go back to last year, he's had a chance to win a major. He's done basically nothing for the rest of the year. And this year already, he has 2 top 10s in signature events, and the rest of his golf's been pretty mediocre. You get upside if you back him, definitely. Do I believe that he can become a Masters champion in his 40s? I think likelihood is the ship sailed in 2017.
Okay.
Tom Kim, Sam.
Tom Kim, yeah, I don't like him this week at all, to be honest. I mean, he closed with a 66 last year, which surprising, really, and maybe disproves the notion that he's too short for Augusta. But he's only had 1 top 10 this year, which was at Pebble Beach. He was very bad in last week. Obviously, we've said that you should take that with a pinch of salt, but he was really bad. And I just don't think that this, unless his game is really on song, I don't think this is the course for him. That's it. Sergio Garcia, Ben.
One of the hardest players to weigh up, I would say, because if you take his price of 66, 80 to 1 even in a place versus where he is in the world of golf right now, like take, for example, if you use data golf rankings, he's a massive price. The reason for that is since he won this in 2017, he has missed the cut 5 times and finished 23rd in the other. The one thing I will say is the last 2 US Opens have been much better. 3 of the last 4, actually. He's played pretty well in the US Open. And his form compared to this time last year is so much better. He is genuinely, at the moment, somewhere between the 3rd and 5th best player on LIV behind Rahm and Neiman. there are other live players like Koepka. Like his live form is way stronger than Koepka's, but I think people would generally believe that Koepka can win another major and Sergio can't. So we'll find out this week. Like if he's serious about wanting to make the Ryder Cup side, he needs to start playing better in the biggest tournaments, right? And he's not in. What will he be in? He'll be in this, and that might be about it actually. So yeah, time to do it, as they say. Next on the list is Sahith Theegala. You give me all the oldies, and you got all these sexy young players.
I know. There was a reason that I left you with Garcia, because I thought that's a really hard one. But no, Theegala, I'm a huge fan of his generally, and actually I really like his game for Augusta generally. I think someone who is a little bit erratic off the tee. He's got a great short game. He was top 10 on his debut here, so the course does suit. Again, a bit like Tom Kim, you need to come in with your game in decent shape. And I was expecting him to kick on this year, honestly, after a good year last year. But he's got one top 20 finish to his top 20 finish to his name this year. I think he's won. I can see him winning a green jacket in his career, but it's not going to be this week, in my humble opinion. Right, Ben, Patrick Reed. Left you with another tricky one.
I was just checking how many Masters he'd played. This will be his 12th Masters. He won it in 2017. The interesting thing is, before he won it, he hadn't really done anything here. He's one of those trends busters, hadn't broken 70, which is always one of the trends you hear about a lot. And he came and he didn't just win it. He had Rory McIlroy chasing him on Sunday, and he dominated. I think Spieth, Fowler made runs at him that year, maybe DJ as well. And the interesting thing about that is that he's come back since, and he's really enjoyed that experience, and he has really delivered. So he's been 4th, 8th, 10th and 12th. That's from 6 goes since he came back, and his form's good. So again, there are a few players on Liv that are quite hard to weigh up. There's one nugget I want to share though about Liv and Doral. Of all the ways they prepare for majors, this might be the best. I'm not totally sold on it, because I know deep down Doral is not Augusta. God no.
Kind of flat, right?
It is. Yeah, it's flat. It's in Florida. It's not good, but it is big and it's hard. And you probably do have a lot of those approach shots that you've mentioned there from longer distances. But if you go back, 2016, Danny Willett had been, I think, 3rd at Doral, won the Masters. When Adam Scott won the Masters, he'd been 2nd at Doral. When Bubba Watson won the Masters, in fact, Adam Scott had won. When Bubba Watson won the Masters, he had been maybe 3rd at Doral. DJ's been 2nd there. Mike Weir's been 2nd there. Charles Schwartzel was 2nd at Doral the year before he won the Masters. So I think it's probably a good way to prepare. John Rahm said it was a good way to prepare when he was speaking with the media last week. I think it could prove correct. Certainly better than Texas. Patrick Reed, definitely each way chance. Sepp Straka.
Yeah, Sepp. As I've talked about before, Ben, he has got my favourite swing in the game. I stand by this. He's got solid course form here. He's 30th, 46th, 16th. But, and you just mentioned this, never broken 70. For me, I know that obviously you get people who break these stats, and Reed did, but I still think it's a key one, and he hasn't broken 70 here. If he does this year, then maybe he's one for next year. He's high in the 175 to 200 yard approach range, which I like. I can see him finishing maybe top 20. I don't think he's going to be in contention to win, personally. Dustin Johnson, Ben. See the way I've left you with all the live players.
Speaking of people who won't be in contention to win, no, look, a lot of people have been making more positive noises about DJ recently, and he has shown some signs on live, but he blew out completely after a strong start last week. He has not been particularly competitive in major championships. He has all the ability in the world. That doesn't leave you, I don't think. Would any of us be surprised if on Thursday afternoon Dustin Johnson signed for around a 67? Absolutely not. But I think those people who were rushing to back him last Friday probably feel they should have waited a few days and then reconsidered, actually. So, yeah, not one for me. Wyndham Clark.
Yeah, not one for me. He was pretty poor in his Masters debut. I mean, not many people are great on their Masters debut, Ludwig aside. So yeah, we take that with a pinch of salt. But you look at his shot shape off the tee. You couldn't find a less suitable shot shape for Augusta than his fade come slice. So he's not one for me on this course. As good as a major player as he is. Right, Ben, Jason Day for you.
Start of his career, second with Drew, third. I think were his first three Masters appearances. More recently, not so good, but he's been better since he sort of fully completed his comeback, sort of finished mid-pack the last couple of years. About a month ago, I thought I might be putting Jason Day up for the Masters. I put him up at Sawgrass and he withdrew. Then I put him up in Houston. And by the way, he withdrew with a family stomach bug. It wasn't anything worse than that. The vertigo did not return. And put him up in Houston where he was a bit disappointing. But there are some positives. I mean, he has a brilliant short game. That, strokes gained around the greens are really important category to look at. It isn't usually, but it is here. And he's always been dynamite in that regard. He hits the ball really high and far, which definitely helps. And the rain they've had, or are having as we speak, may make that even more so. His approach play comes and goes, but it's generally been a bit more solid. And he definitely has putted better lately. And all of this ties in with going back to work with Cole Swatton, who was his mentor and his coach and his caddy when he was the very best player in the world. So there are reasons to believe with Jason Day. And of those at sort of 66 to 1, he'd be one of the more interesting, because I think I said it on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, he's not done winning big tournaments. I think I've come to the conclusion that he isn't going to win this one. Okay. Corey Connors.
Yeah, keep this one short and sweet, really. He's got 3 top 10s in his last 5 Masters, which is obviously good. He likes the course, solid form at the moment. Much like our friend Tommy Fleetwood, the putts just don't seem to drop on a Sunday, and I think that's going to be his problem. So I like him. I like his course fit. I can see him finishing in the top, maybe even the top 10. I don't think he's going to win. Ben, one of my favourites, Tony Finau.
Tony Finau, there he be now. The problem with Tony Finau this year isn't his putting, because he's had a couple of really good putting weeks and loads of rotten ones. That's fine. I don't mind that as a punter. That's not a bad thing to take on board. It's the fact that his approach play has really been poor. And Tony Finau is low-key one of the best iron players on the PGA Tour the last 5 years. I wouldn't have him any worse than 10th. Right now, he's closer to 100th. And unless that improves... and he finished right down he sort of had the worst Texas Open prep, because unlike Orberg and Akshay, as you mentioned, who at least missed the cut and had the weekend off, he made the cut and then played terribly. So there's not a lot to be positive about. The one thing I'll say is this: he's twice the price he was last year, twice the price he was the year before that. This is the first time you've been able to back Tony Finau at 66 to 1 for the Masters, pretty much since his debut, I would suggest. So there is upside because he knows his way around here, but he'll miss too many putts and he'll hit it in the water on 12. Akshay Bhatia.
Yeah, I like Akshay generally. 35th on his debut, which is good. Yeah, in theory, his game should suit the course. He loves those kind of slinging those fades, doesn't he? You can see him sort of slinging those fades around the trees. And he's got that tricky debut out of the way. But yeah, he missed the cut last week. Do we take that with a pinch of salt? Possibly. He was tied for third at the Players. Obviously not a greatly similar course to Augusta, but at least it shows that there's form there. I think he'll go well. I probably won't be backing him, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him up there somewhere. Ben, Cam Smith.
Cam Smith. Now, I don't know if Cam Smith has been in jail recently. I suspect not, but what I do know is he became a dad a few weeks ago. And if you're looking for nappy factor evidence, actually the best tournament for it has probably been the Masters. Danny Willett, John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler. You remember last year with Scheffler, it's like, is Meredith there? Is she going to give birth? I think the baby was born in May. We were absolutely taken for a ride. But anyway, Cam Smith became a dad a couple of weeks ago. Talked about it last week, really touchingly, actually. Seems to be absolutely loving life. I think he's really interesting. He's got a fabulous record at Augusta. There are reasons on paper why you'd think he would struggle here, but we have seen over the years guys who've just got dynamite short games and creativity. Patrick Reed, Jordan Spieth, and Cam Smith have really taken to Augusta National. His iron play is really good as well. Width off the tee helps. And he comes into it off a good effort at Doral. He'd been sort of quiet before then, but he was expecting a baby. So I sort of find myself forgiving that a little bit. And as for Doral, he withdrew from it last year. I can't think of many worse courses for him in terms of the length of it, the emphasis on sort of total driving rather than which here isn't so important to me. So I think Cam Smith's got a big chance, yeah, and he's a big price.
All right. Right, we may need to slightly speed these up, Ben. No, I
love trying with Harmon, and I've just rabbited on. It's Bob McIntyre next. Go on.
Well, okay. He's a bet for me this week. In fact, he's the first player I've had a bet on, apart from a couple of anti-post ones. So course form, 12th, 23rd. Again, loves to work the ball, doesn't he? Which is great here. Top 10s in his last 2 starts. He's got the game and an improving attitude to win majors. I like him a lot. Tyrrell Hatton, Ben.
Speaking of attitudes, that might be the problem over 4 days here. He obviously played a lot better at Augusta last year. The problem with Hatton, I think if you were at the start of the season talking about the prices he's about to go off, you'd be amazed, but he's simply not been as good since the win in Dubai. So, yeah, big question mark at the moment. I'd like to see something from him because I was really keen on him anti-post for the USPGA. Sam, Min Woo Lee.
My latest song subject. Like him, he was 14th on his debut here. I remember being really sweet on his chances 2 years ago, and he missed the cut. And I don't know if I can forgive him. He was solid last year, 22nd. Obviously, after the Players, he's going to be feeling confident. So, yeah, I wouldn't talk anyone out of him. Probably won't be backing him myself. Ben, Will Zalatoris.
3 appearances, 3 top 10s, a clearly ideal game for this. And last year, he was in the worst of the way. There was there was a bad draw to have last year, and he had it, and he shot a second round 77. He's had around a 77 last year and around a 75 the year before. Sorry, 2 years before, because he missed 2023, and he's finished 6th and 9th. Runner-up on debut. I mean, his course credentials are flawless. I would say he's the one who's been giving me the biggest headache, because his form doesn't look great. But then I think, well, actually, if you go back to Saturday of the Players, I think he was favourite, and then the wheels fell off. So I don't know exactly what to expect from him, but I can see why anyone would be interested in him. Russell Henley.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a very popular bet this week. Maybe the most bet outsider, and I've already had a bet on him. I like him a lot. 38th last year was worst since his debut in 2013. He loves this course. His best was tied for 4th 2 years ago. His putting which has sometimes been a weakness, doesn't look like it's a weakness anymore, at least on paper. Yeah, I really like him. Really, and I think he's overpriced. Right, Ben, Tommy Fleetwood.
Yeah, he's another who's given me a bit of a headache, because I actually think there's a very strong argument that he's about the 5th best player in the world, and he's not the 5th in the betting, but he's only the 5th best player in the world if you look at underlying data and you forget about trophies. We have to acknowledge that. But he is also, when we talk about majors, one of the best things, the best point is someone who's been there and contended before. And he's done that clearly several times now. He was 3rd here last year with a great final round. The slight concern for me would be that he played in Texas. I wouldn't worry that it looks like his worst golf for about a year. I don't think it necessarily, the form will be so fickle from that event. It's just 4 rounds battling the wind and coming out there feeling like there might be a problem that there isn't. I think that would be a slight worry. If it hadn't been for Texas last week, I'd say he's about as solid as you get outside the big 2 or 3. Victor Hovland, Sam.
Yeah, no, he's the one who's given me the biggest headache, as probably unsurprisingly. But yeah, I mean, who knows where he feels with his swing at the moment? Since he won the Valspar, who knows? But what I do know is he was tied for 7th here 2 years ago. He opened with a 65, which shows what he is capable of around this place if he gets his head in the right space and the confidence is there. We can completely ignore the missed cut last year because his game was in all kinds of just dreadful at the time. He's another one who's very good in the 175 to 200 yard range. And just before we click record on this pod, I succumbed to a bet on him. So yeah, he's in my team. Shane Lowry, Ben.
Yeah, as solid as you like. I think everyone by now knows that he learned a lot playing with Tiger Woods here a few years ago, and since then has become a regular on this leaderboard. He wasn't so good last year. It's the one thing that I keep coming back to with Bob that's nagging away at me, because I, like you, do like Bob this week. But going to Singapore for your final pre-Masters start, I wonder how much that contributed to Shane putting so badly here last year. Probably didn't, because Shane has weeks where he putts really badly. But you go from those really slow, grainy greens to these really lightning fast bentgrass greens. I don't think it's a great idea, and I hope Bob doesn't regret it. Shane this year played in the Valspar instead for his final warm-up, so his prep's been better. He has, him and Tommy, they're just as solid as you could ask for. Some people will be very happy just back in those 10, 12 places. One or both of them will finish in the top 12. Do you feel that they can win or are going to win? Maybe not, but they could be there on Sunday, both of them. Jordan Spieth, Sam.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you haven't given yourself all the easy ones.
This is a really tough one. I mean, look, negative strokes gained approach last week. I know it's San Antonio, but I don't like it. As much as he loves this course, the relative form doesn't stack up well from previous years. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I don't think this week is going to be the one for him, but I can see him winning one again in the future. Patrick Cantlay, Ben.
I have far more faith in Patrick Cantlay than a lot of people do, and he was very, very close to making my second plan this week. And then during the Texas Open, I turned on the TV and I saw him play one shot, and it was a 3-foot putt, and it never looked like going in. And his putter was kind of, for that for about 18 months, 2 years ago, when he was winning loads of tournaments, his putter was great, and it's been iffy lately. It's been up and down, but iffy. And he's putted really badly at Augusta in general in the past. It's the thing that's kept him from contending. So on the one hand, I think you can spin that into a positive, but are you going to go from being terrified of 3-footers at San Antonio to all of a sudden making them all at Augusta when you haven't before? Maybe not. So he's off the list, but he was on it. Hideki Matsuyama.
Yeah, I mean, for me, he's an example where anti-post betting is tough, right? Because after his record-breaking century win, I think a lot of people would have been looking for the first major of the year and thinking, wow, Hideki's won there before. He's in great form. I'm going to have a bet at him now. I don't know what price it would have been, but since then, his game has absolutely dropped off a cliff. I mean, he's not playing anywhere near to his potential. Missed the cut last week. I don't really like him this week, honestly. It wouldn't surprise me if he was up there, but at the same time, it doesn't appeal. Joaquin Niemann, Ben.
On that, well, when people post their bets on X at this time of Masters Week, I'm on Shane Lowry at 66-1. Like, thank you for telling us now. But the point is, you never have anyone say, I took 14-1 Hideki Matsuyama in January. Anyway, Joaquin Niemann, the big question mark is his form in majors. I've tipped him for this before. Back in the day, we used to talk a lot about a link with Riviera, which is where he produced the biggest win of his career to date. So I think he does have the game for Augusta. He shapes the ball. He's been mentored by Sergio Garcia. At some stage, he will contend for the Masters. Can you go from never contending in a major to winning the Masters? It has happened. Hasn't happened a lot. So he wouldn't be for me at 25-1. Brooks Koepka.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, he had the best cumulative major record. And, he's still, obviously, that's why he plays the game for majors, right? That hasn't changed. But I think it's worth noting when he won the PGA Championship a couple of years ago, that was preceded by some decent live form. He was 6th the week before on live. This time around, he was 18th at Doral, which should be a course that would suit his game. Maybe he's not motivated by it. I don't know, but not one for me. Justin Thomas, Ben.
So I tipped him for the Masters in 2015, 2016, 2017. Not 2015, actually. Sorry. 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023, or something like that.
Every year.
I've always felt he was a potential Masters champion. I didn't tip him last year. The problem is he's not won in almost 3 years and he's 20-1. It's a similar problem to Morikawa at 14-1, right? There's been an absence of big wins. And in general, players who win majors have been winning tournaments. It's not always as simple as that. I do, though, think there are loads of positives, and possibly the number one positive is that over the last couple of tournaments, his putter's come alive. And I think if he'd gone and won the Valspar, probably would be people lining up to back him at 16s. And just the fact that he didn't happen to win because Victor played some great golf and he made 2 mistakes. I think you are getting a difference there in the price, right? Should there be a big difference in a price, like 16, 22-1, whether you finish first or second? Maybe there should, but that's where I am with him. Xander Schauffele.
Yeah, I mean, he's given me a little bit of problem as well, and I very nearly backed him earlier on, but I don't know. It's a really hard one to judge because he's got some lingering injury concern, or does he? I don't know. This is the problem, because he played pretty well at Valspar, hasn't played since. Is he now completely fully fit and confident? I'd love to see him come in fully fit because I think he would potentially go very, very close. He's been runner-up here before. He's just one of those that I can't quite bite the bullet at a very short price. So I'm gonna pass, but I can see why people might back him. Ludwig Oberg, Ben.
Yeah, probably a lot of people expected to be backing him for the Masters this year. Jordan Spieth was second in the Masters on his debut, came back the next year and won it pretty convincingly. I could definitely see that happening. And I again, would not be hung up on a Texas Open miscut. But There won't be many Masters champions who've come into it miscut. It's not ideal, and I don't know as many people ever will have come into the Masters miscut, and be 16-1.
That's
So
a fair point.
it's a mark of the respect he's earned already in his brief career. The other thing I'll just note is that he was the number one putter here last year. Is he going to be the number one putter again? Probably not. Could he still win it? Yeah, but he's not for me at 16th. Bryson.
Yeah, he's a tricky one, really. I mean, he showed promising signs at Doral, eventually finished 5th. He closed with a 75. That's not great, is it? And that's his only top 5 on Live this year. I go as far as to say I'd be surprised if he's outside of the top 20. So I expect him to be safely up there. Again, at the price, there are question marks, really, to be betting him at a short price. So, yes, there are appeals, but probably not for me. John Rahm, Ben.
I tipped him last year, and it was a hubristic load of nonsense from me. I know best. All you people who say that Masters champions can't win it the next year are talking rubbish. I was completely and utterly wrong. But it's hard to resist going in again because you're getting the same price. He doesn't have to defend. His form is better. If you go by Data Golf's 50-round tracker, he's averaging 2.4 strokes gained per round. It was 1.8 this time last year. So he's 25% better by that metric. It's only one metric. But he doesn't have to defend. He doesn't have to answer all the questions about why he joined Live. And he comes in with another top 10. And actually, the only problem in his game last week was his around the green stats. I think you might have seen the video where he chipped it and it came back to his feet and went in the water. Like, that's going to lose you some shots. I think John Rahm is the biggest threat to Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler. Many will disagree and say it's Colin Morikawa. Sam?
Look, he ticks all the boxes here, doesn't he? Apart from one very important box, Ben, which is making putts when you need to make them. And I'm going to take a stat from Byron Lindekay on Twitter, which I liked yesterday. Since 2023, when Morikawa has been within 3 of the lead heading into the final round, he's only had 1 of 8 rounds with ShotLink where he's gained with a putter. And that is going to be a problem at Augusta. Simple as that. Right, Rory McIlroy, Ben.
We're running out of time. I'll simply say this. I don't think he's prepared as well, and I don't think there have been as many question marks around his rivals possibly ever. So it's still been an enormous achievement if he can win this. For context, though, if you're going to be betting at 7-1, he was twice that price to win at Pebble Beach. He was a bigger price to win the Players' Championship. He's been 16-20-1 to win Masters in the recent past. 7-1, let me put it really simply, Sam. What's the point in betting on him? I'm going to absolutely remember where I was if Rory McIlroy wins the Masters. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. I don't need to be backing him at 7-1. I hope he wins. I think he might just do it. Scotty Scheffler, Sam.
Yeah, all I'll say is I'm a big believer in this whole defending champion thing and the fact that you don't win 2 years in a row. I mean, only 3 people have ever done it. Nicholas, Faldo and Woods. Now, that's not to say that Scheffler isn't up to that level. He is. But it's a big enough of a question mark to not be backing him for me. But yeah, he'll be in the top 10, won't he? Almost certainly. Right, let's move on, Ben. Fancy picks, we'll have to keep it short and sweet. I'll just very quickly recap our Asian Swing leaderboard, which obviously the Asian Swing continues this week. The Masters is not in Asia, of course, but please do enter your fantasy team. The top 3 are Gary Mackay, Ewan Sillers and Paul Brannigan. Lewis Blaine as our overall leader. Ben, who are your 6 picks?
Scheffler, Rory, Shane, Cam Smith, Will Zalatoris and John Rahm. Captain Cam Smith just to try and climb the leaderboard, right? Because I'm struggling at the moment. Go on, who are yours?
Okay, I've got Captain Rory. I got Scotty Scheffler, Bob McIntyre, who obviously I love, Shane Lowry, same as you, solid, Russell Henley, and Keegan Bradley. That's my little outsider.
She's a difference maker. Good stuff. If it sounds like we're rushing, we are. We've got about 4 minutes left, so
let's do highest bidder. Let me quickly find our topic, because some people have kindly sent in a Masters topic for us, and we have.
I hope this is not name the holes.
Can you name as many champions? Oh, it's a nice simple one between 2000 and 2024. How many can you name, Ben?
I'm multiplying these 2 numbers on the screen. So there you go. I'm going 15, Sam.
Okay, I've gone 11, so you can go for it, Ben.
Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Danny Willett, John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler. Why didn't I do it in reverse order from the start? Hideki Matsuyama, Dustin Johnson, Patrick Reed, Sergio Garcia, Jordan Spieth, Bubba Watson, Adam Scott, Charles Schwartzel, Phil Mickelson, I've already said, haven't I? Angel Cabrera, Mike Weir, Trevor Immelman, Zach Johnson.
Yeah, they're very good.
Yeah, Jose.
Basically, named them all. Yeah, that's I mean, I think it went too low on that. I panicked with the time, I think. I mean, ultimately, we should both be able to name all of those, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I think so. That was a nice
maybe miss one. I don't know. But
yeah, I'm sure there would have been someone I missed. But yeah, I like those. Easy.
I think ultimately there's a time and a place for a quick highest bidder, and this was the perfect time. So thank you to Imagine Not Liking Sport for sending that one in. There are other weeks to be more creative with this, and we would encourage people to do that. And yeah, we will have more of a normal week next week. And
we're not going to profile 50 members of the field for the event in China on the DP World Tour, or
unless it's been a very popular feature. Then maybe that's what people are crying out for. Who knows? But all that remains to be said is this is my favourite week of the year. I'm sure it's up there for you, Ben, as well. So I hope everyone really enjoys the Masters. Let's hope that we have a cracking event. Let's hope that there's lots of people in contention on Sunday, as Ben says, and enjoy the tournament. And we look forward to chatting next week.